The spaceship called Morning Star moved slowly through the dark space between Mars and Jupiter. Dr. Kim Sora held her baby son Tae-min close to her chest. The little boy was only 6 months old. His small hands grabbed at her white lab coat as the ship shook and made strange sounds. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Captain Park Jin-ho's voice came through the speakers. His words were scared and fast. All people go to escape pods now. This is real. Move fast, but it was too late. The alien ships had already caught them. Sora ran down the long halls of the ship. Emergency lights flashed red and yellow. People screamed and ran past her. Her baby cried loudly, but she could not stop to comfort him. She had to find safety first. The aliens were called Kethmari. They looked like giant insects with too many eyes and long, thin arms. Their skin was gray and hard like metal. They made clicking sounds when they talked. Sora had read about them in science books, but she never thought she would see them. She found an empty storage room and hid behind some big boxes. Through the small window, she could see the alien ships. They were silver and moved like snakes through space. One by one, they destroyed the human escape pods. Bright fires bloomed in the darkness as each pod exploded. No one would escape. No one would tell Earth what happened here. Tae-min stopped crying and looked around with his big brown eyes. Even though he was just a baby, he seemed to know they were in danger. He made small, quiet sounds and held tight to his mother's finger. The door to the storage room opened with a loud hiss. 3 Kethmari walked in. Their feet made tap-tap-tap sounds on the metal floor. Their many eyes moved around the room until they found Sora and her baby. The leader had a small machine on its chest that helped it speak human words. The voice sounded like broken glass. Baby human needed. We take now. You give baby. Never, Sora whispered. She held Tae-min tighter and backed away from the aliens. The leader made angry clicking sounds. It pointed a small weapon at Sora. Blue light came out and hit her. Her body went stiff and she could not move her arms or legs. She fell down but tried to keep holding her baby. No, 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 she said, but her voice was weak. The aliens took Tae-min from her arms. They put him in a glass box that floated in the air. The baby reached his tiny hands toward his mother, but the aliens carried him away. Sora tried to crawl after them, but her body would not work. The blue light had made her muscles stop working. She could only watch as her son disappeared through the door. Then everything went dark. When Sora woke up, she was in a small white room. There were no windows and only one door. She was lying on a hard bed. Her head hurt and her mouth was dry. She sat up slowly and looked around. Tae-min, she called out. Where is my baby? No one answered. The room was very quiet except for the sound of air moving through vents in the ceiling. She got up and went to the door, but it would not open. She hit it with her hands and shouted, but nothing happened. Days passed. The aliens gave her food and water through a small opening in the wall. Sometimes they came to take blood from her arm or ask her questions about human babies. They wanted to know how fast human children grow and learn. They wanted to know about human families and how parents take care of their children. Sora answered some questions because she hoped it would help her see Tae-min again. But the aliens never brought her baby to visit. They never told her if he was safe or hurt or sick. After many weeks, the questions stopped. The aliens did not come to her room anymore except to bring food. Sora spent her time thinking about her son and making plans to escape. But the room was too strong and she was just one person. One day she heard sounds in the wall, voices talking in the alien language. She put her ear against the cold metal and listened. The words were hard to understand, but she heard one thing clearly. They were talking about sending someone away. Someone small, someone young. Her heart started beating very fast. She knew they were talking about Tae-min. That night, Sora did not sleep. She sat by the door and waited. In the morning, the aliens came. There were 4 of them this time. The leader had the speaking machine on its chest. Human female, it said. We finish with baby human. No more need for tests. Baby goes away now. Where are you taking him? Sora asked. She tried to sound calm, but her voice shook. Please let me see him one more time. The leader made clicking sounds that might have been laughing. Baby human goes to empty world. No life there. Baby will die, but this is not our problem. We have data we needed. Sora felt like someone had hit her in the stomach. She could not breathe for a moment. They were going to leave her baby alone on a dead planet. A 6-month-old child could not live by himself. He would die scared and hungry and alone. You cannot do this, she said. Tears ran down her face. He is just a baby, please. But the aliens were already leaving. The leader stopped at the door and looked back with its many eyes. Human emotion is interesting but not useful. We study what we need. Now we dispose of waste material. The door closed and Sora was alone again. She fell to her knees and cried until no more tears would come. Her baby was gone. Her little Taemin who liked to grab her hair and smile when she sang to him. He would never grow up or learn to walk or say his first words. Outside her prison, the alien ship moved through space toward a small dead world. In the cargo bay, a tiny escape pod waited. Inside the pod, baby Taemin slept peacefully. He did not know that his mother was crying for him. He did not know that the aliens planned to leave him alone to die. He did not know that someone was watching over him, someone who had worked on the alien ship and felt sorry for what they were doing to innocent people, someone who had made the escape pod special without telling the others. The pod had more food and water than the aliens knew. It had better air machines and stronger walls. It had a secret beacon that would call for help when it landed. Most important of all, it had hope. Because even in the darkest times when evil people do terrible things, there are always others who try to help. Sometimes help comes from places you never expect. Soon the escape pod would fall toward the small world below. But baby Taemin would not be as alone as the aliens thought he would be. 3 years passed in the cold white rooms of the alien research station. Baby Taemin had grown into a small boy with dark hair and bright eyes. He lived in a glass cage that was bigger than a closet but smaller than a real room. The walls were clear so the aliens could watch him all the time. The boy did not remember his mother or the warm ship where he was born. He only knew the white lights and metal floors of the alien place. He only knew the strange clicking sounds the Kethmari made when they talked to each other. Dr. Vextan was the alien scientist who watched Taemin every day. He had more eyes than the other aliens and his gray skin had silver spots. He wrote notes on a glowing pad about everything the human child did. The boy was different from other creatures they had studied. Most alien children who came to this place became sick or stopped eating. They would sit in the corner and not move. But the human boy stayed curious. He played with the toys they gave him. He tried to talk to the aliens even though they never talked back. Every morning the aliens would take Taemin to a different room for tests. They would put needles in his arm to take his blood. They would make him look at bright lights that hurt his eyes. They would put strange machines on his head that made buzzing sounds. The worst tests were when they put medicine in his food. The medicine made his body feel hot and his head spin. Sometimes he could see things that were not really there. Other times he felt so strong he could bend the metal toys they gave him. But something strange was happening that the aliens did not expect. Each time they gave Taemin the medicine, his body got used to it faster. His brain grew new parts that helped him think better. His eyes could see things more clearly. His ears could hear sounds from far away. Dr. Vexitan wrote in his notes that the human child was changing in ways they had never seen before. Most creatures died when they tried to change them this much. But Taemin was getting stronger and smarter every day. The boy began to understand the alien language without anyone teaching him. When the scientists talked about their tests, he knew what they were saying. When they made plans, he could hear them through the walls. His new brain could learn things very fast. At night, when the aliens thought he was sleeping, Taemin would practice his new abilities. He found that he could make the electronic toys work just by touching them. He could feel the electricity moving through the walls of his cage. Sometimes when he concentrated hard, the lights would flicker. In the cages around him were other creatures from different worlds. There was a blue bird-like alien who sang sad songs. There was a furry creature with 6 legs who never stopped shaking with fear. There was a plant being who had not moved in months and might be dead. Taemin felt sorry for these other prisoners. Even though he was just 3 years old, he understood that they were all trapped and scared. He tried to comfort them by humming soft songs his enhanced memory had created. Sometimes he would share his food by pushing it through the small gaps between the cages. The aliens noticed that Taemin was different from normal human children in other ways too. He never cried even when the tests hurt him. He watched everything with calm, intelligent eyes. He seemed to understand that fighting would not help him, but learning might. Dr. Vextan became very interested in these changes. He ran more tests and gave Taemin stronger medicines. Each time the boy adapted faster than before. His DNA was rewriting itself in ways that should have been impossible. One day something happened that scared all the alien scientists. There was a storm in space that made the station's power flicker on and off. For exactly 17 seconds, all the electronic locks stopped working. All the cages opened at the same time. Most of the alien prisoners just sat there too afraid to move. But Taman calmly walked out of his cage and went straight to the main computer. His small hands moved over the buttons like he had used the machine many times before. The security cameras recorded everything. A 3-year-old human child was downloading secret files from the alien database. He was copying information about all their experiments. He was learning about the layout of the entire station. All in 17 seconds. When the power came back on, Taman was sitting in his cage playing with blocks like nothing had happened. But Dr. Vextan knew something important had changed. The human boy had shown abilities that no creature should have. The doctor watched the security video over and over. How did a small child know how to use their advanced computers? How did he move so fast and know exactly what buttons to press? How did he get back to his cage so quickly? Late that night, Dr. Vextan made a decision that would change everything. He sent a message to his leaders telling them the human experiment was becoming too dangerous. The child was learning too much and growing too powerful. Soon he might be able to escape or even take control of the station's systems. The message traveled through space to the alien high command. Military leaders read about the human boy who could interface with their technology. Scientists studied the data about his impossible adaptations. Everyone agreed on one thing: the experiment had to end. Commander Rathkul sent orders back to the research station. The human subject was to be terminated immediately. All data would be stored in classified files. The project would be marked as a failure and never spoken of again. But Dr. Vextan had spent 3 years watching this human child. He had seen Taman show kindness to other prisoners. He had watched him endure pain without complaint. He had observed intelligence and courage that impressed even an alien scientist who thought his own species was superior. When the termination order came, Dr. Vextan stared at it for a long time. Then he looked at the small boy playing quietly in his cage. Taman looked back with those bright, dark eyes that seemed to understand everything. For the first time in his long career, Dr. Vextan decided to disobey a direct order. He would not kill this remarkable child, but he also could not let his commanders know the boy was still alive. There was only one solution. He would have to make everyone believe Taman was dead while secretly giving him a chance to live. The doctor began making plans that would save the human boy's life but also destroy his own career. Soon Taman would leave this terrible place forever. The question was whether he would survive what came next. Dr. Vextan worked in secret during the night shift when fewer aliens were awake. He had only 2 days before the commanders expected him to kill the human boy. 2 days to save a life without anyone knowing. In the storage bay, he found an old escape pod that was supposed to be thrown away. The pod was small and dented, but the life support system still worked. Vextan began modifying it with equipment he stole from other parts of the station. He added extra food containers that would keep for months. He installed better air filters and water recyclers. He put in medical supplies and warm blankets. Most importantly, he added a secret beacon that would send out signals if anyone was looking for survivors. The work was dangerous. If other aliens caught him, they would ask too many questions. But Vextan had studied the station schedules for years. He knew when the halls would be empty and which cameras were broken. While he worked, he thought about the human child. In 3 years of watching Taman, he had learned something that surprised him. Humans were not the weak, stupid creatures his people believed them to be. This small boy had shown more courage and kindness than most adult aliens Vextan knew. When other test subjects died, Taman would stand quietly at his cage bars and make soft humming sounds. The doctor realized the boy was mourning for creatures he had never even spoken to. When new prisoners arrived scared and confused, Taman would share his food and toys even though he had very little. This was not the behavior his species expected from humans. Kethmari children fought each other for resources. They showed no emotion when others suffered. But this human boy seemed to care about everyone around him. On the second night, Vextan finished preparing the escape pod. He programmed its computer to fly to a distant star system that appeared empty on their maps. The journey would take several days, but the life support would last much longer. Now came the hardest part. He had to get Taman to the pod without being seen. The next morning, Vextan went to the boy's cage carrying a syringe filled with sleeping medicine. This was normal. The aliens often drugged their test subjects before moving them to different rooms. "Time for your final test," Vextan said in the human language he had learned. His voice was calm, but his hands shook a little. Taemin looked up from the book he was reading. The boy could read now, even though no one had taught him. His enhanced brain learned things faster than should be possible. "Will it hurt?" Taemin asked quietly. Vextan felt something twist in his chest. Even facing another painful experiment, the boy's main concern was simple and honest. "You will sleep," Vextan said. "When you wake up, everything will be different." The injection worked quickly. Taemin's eyes closed and his small body relaxed. Vextan picked him up carefully. The boy was lighter than expected. 3 years of limited food had kept him thin. Moving through the station was terrifying. Every sound made Vextan jump. Every shadow might hide another alien who would ask what he was doing. But his luck held. The hall stayed empty. In the storage bay, he placed Taemin inside the escape pod and strapped him into the pilot seat. The boy looked very small, surrounded by all the equipment. Vextan tucked extra blankets around him and checked the air system one more time. He had written a simple message in human letters and left it where Taemin would find it when he woke up. The message explained that he was free and safe. It told him how to use the basic controls if he needed to. It wished him luck in his new life. Before closing the pod, Vextan did something he had never done before. He touched the sleeping boy's forehead gently with one long finger. "Forgive us," he whispered in the alien language Taemin would understand. The pod launched automatically just before the morning shift began. Vextan watched it disappear into hyperspace on his private screen. Then he erased all records of the launch from the computer systems. When his commander asked about the human test subject later that day, Vextan had his story ready. He showed fake medical reports proving that Taemin had died during the night from complications with the experiments. He presented disposal records showing that the body had been ejected into space according to proper procedures. Commander Rathkul examined the reports with his many eyes. "The human project was expensive," he clicked angrily. 3 years of research and we have nothing to show for it. "The data we collected will help with future experiments," Vextan replied. "We learned that human genetics are more unstable than we thought. They cannot handle our modifications." This was a lie, but it was what the commander wanted to hear. The Kethmari prided themselves on their advanced science. Admitting that a human child had become too powerful for them to control would be embarrassing. "File all data under maximum security," Rathkul ordered. "We will not speak of this failure again." Vextan bowed his head respectfully. "Yes, Commander. The human experiment is terminated and forgotten." But it was not forgotten. As the days passed, Vextan found himself wondering what had happened to Taemin. Had the pod reached the empty world safely? Was the boy still alive? Would he be able to survive on his own? The doctor had given him the best chance possible, but Taemin was still just a small child. Even with his enhanced abilities, he would need help to live. Vextan could only hope that someone would find him before it was too late. Far away in deep space, the escape pod traveled toward a world that appeared lifeless on alien star charts. Inside the pod, Taemin slept peacefully. His enhanced body was already adapting to the long journey. His modified brain was processing new information even in sleep. He did not know that he was free. He did not know that someone had risked everything to save him. He did not know that the world waiting ahead held secrets that would change his life forever. The pod sensors detected the distant planet and began preparing for landing. Soon Taemin would wake up in a place where the air was clean and the sky was open, but he would not be alone. Ancient eyes were already watching his approach from deep beneath crystal mountains. The boy who had survived alien experiments was about to meet beings older and wiser than any creature in the galaxy. The world called Taysen looked empty from space. Its surface was covered with blue crystals and silver mountains. There were no cities or roads that alien scanners could see. The air was clean and the water was pure, but no signs of intelligent life appeared on any sensors. This was exactly what the ancient Draktharian wanted other species to believe. Deep beneath the crystal, mountains lived beings that younger races would call dragons. They had watched the stars for thousands of years. They had seen empires rise and fall while they remained hidden in their underground cities. Elder Hieran was the first to feel the metal object falling from the sky. She was older than the mountains themselves, and her senses could detect life from great distances. What she felt in the burning pod confused her. The life force was small and young like a hatchling, but it carried the marks of terrible pain and artificial changes. Someone had hurt this young being and changed its body in ways that should not be possible. Hiran spread her massive wings and flew up through the crystal caves toward the surface. Her scales were deep blue like the ocean, and her eyes glowed with inner fire. She was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The escape pod had crashed in a valley between two mountains. Smoke rose from the twisted metal and small fires burned in the dry grass around it. Hiran landed softly and folded her wings. Her claws made small clicking sounds on the crystal ground as she walked toward the wreckage. Inside the broken pod, she found something that made her ancient heart beat faster. A human child no more than 8 years old lay unconscious among the scattered supplies. His small body was covered with scars from medical procedures. Strange marks on his skin showed where alien machines had been attached. But he was alive. His chest moved up and down with steady breathing. His face looked peaceful in sleep even though he had survived a terrible crash. Hiran had lived for 3,000 years, but she had never seen anything like this child. The artificial changes to his genetics were extensive, but somehow his spirit remained unbroken. Most beings would have gone insane from such treatment, but this young human seemed remarkably whole. She lifted him carefully in her claws and flew back to the crystal caves. The boy was so light he might have been made of air. During the flight, he stirred once and opened dark eyes that seemed far too knowing for someone so young. "Am I dead?" he asked in a language Hiran recognized as human standard. "No, little one," she replied in the same language. "You are safe now." The boy looked at her massive head and glowing eyes without fear. Most creatures screamed when they first saw a dragon, but this child just nodded once and closed his eyes again. In the great hall beneath the mountains, Hiran placed the boy on soft cushions near the healing pools. The other elders gathered around to examine this unexpected visitor. Their scales ranged from silver to deep green, and their eyes held the wisdom of ages. Elder Borum was suspicious. "Why do we involve ourselves with the troubles of younger species?" "We have stayed hidden for good reasons," Elder Najin agreed. "The child has been changed by alien science. We do not know what he might become. He could be dangerous." But Hiran had already made her decision. "Look at him," she said softly. "See how he sleeps without nightmares even after everything he has suffered. See how he trusted me even though I am a creature from his legends. This one is special." For 3 days the elders debated while the boy recovered his strength. Taman woke on the second day and ate the food they brought him without complaint. He answered their questions politely and thanked them for their kindness. He never asked to leave or demanded to know where he was. On the 3rd day, something happened that changed everything. A small dragon hatchling named Young-Ho got too close to the healing pool and fell in. The water was too deep and the current too strong for his tiny wings. Before any adult could react, Timon jumped into the pool fully clothed. His enhanced body moved through the water like he was born for swimming. He grabbed the drowning hatchling and pulled him to safety in seconds. The boy sat on the edge of the pool holding the frightened dragon child while water dripped from his hair. Young-Ho made grateful chirping sounds and nuzzled against Taman's neck. He was scared. Taman said simply when the adult dragon stared at him, "I know what that feels like." Elder Boram looked at the human boy holding the dragon hatchling so gently. In all his years, he had never seen such instant compassion from a stranger. "You saved our young one without thinking of your own safety." "Why?" Taman shrugged as if the answer was obvious. "Because he needed help. That is what you do when someone needs help." That evening, the Council of Elders met to make their final decision. The debate was shorter this time. Hiran spoke for all of them when she announced their choice. "This child will stay with us," she declared. "He will learn our ways and grow strong in our protection. The aliens who hurt him believe he is dead. Here he can heal and become who he was meant to be." Elder Najin had one last concern. "What do we call him?" "His human name carries memories of pain." Hiran looked at the boy who was teaching Young-Ho a simple game with colored stones. Both children were laughing as they played. "He will choose his own name when he is ready. Until then, he is simply our foundling, our gift from the stars." That night, Taman slept on soft cushions in a warm cave. For the first time in years, no one watched him through cameras or took notes about his behavior. No one planned to hurt him in the morning or inject him with painful medicines. Above him, the crystal ceiling sparkled with natural light. Around him, dragon voices hummed ancient lullabies that had soothed countless young ones to sleep. The boy who had survived alien experiments and abandonment finally knew what safety felt like. Tomorrow he would begin learning the ways of dragons. He would discover strengths he never knew he possessed and find a family that would never betray him, but more importantly, he would learn that even in the darkest times, when evil seems to win, there are always those willing to offer kindness to strangers. The dragons had chosen to break their isolation, not for politics or power, but simply because a child needed help. It was the beginning of a new chapter in Taemin's life and perhaps in the history of the galaxy itself. 20 years passed beneath the Crystal Mountains. The human boy once called Taemin had grown into a strong young man. The dragons now knew him by his chosen name Kangthor, which meant thunder of justice in their ancient language. Elder Hieran had become like a mother to him. She taught him the dragon way of thinking with patience and wisdom. Master Dongsu trained his body in the fighting arts that dragons had perfected over thousands of years. Scholar Minai filled his mind with the history and science of countless civilizations. But Kangthor was not just learning dragon knowledge. The alien modifications to his body had continued to develop in ways no one expected. He could touch electronic devices and understand how they worked instantly. His enhanced senses could hear conversations through thick stone walls. His modified muscles gave him strength that amazed even the dragons. Most importantly, his memory of the alien research station remained perfectly clear. Every face, every voice, every cruel experiment was burned into his mind with crystal sharpness. He remembered Dr. Vexistan, who had saved his life. He remembered the other test subjects who had died in the cages around him. On his 28th birthday, Kangthor asked to speak with the Council of Elders. He stood before them in the Great Hall wearing simple clothes but carrying himself with the dignity dragons had taught him. Honored elders, he began using the formal words of respect. I come to ask permission to leave our safe home and return to the galaxy above. The hall fell silent. Elder Borum, who was now very old, leaned forward on his stone perch. Young Kangthor, you know our people have chosen to stay hidden for good reasons. The galaxy is full of war and cruelty. That is exactly why I must go. Kangthor replied calmly. The Kethamari who created me are still doing experiments on innocent beings. They think I am dead and their failure is forgotten. This gives me an advantage no other victim has ever had. Elder Hieran felt both pride and sadness in her ancient heart. She had always known this day would come. Her adopted son would choose to face the darkness that had shaped his early life. You speak of revenge, my son, she said gently. That path leads only to more pain. Not revenge, honored mother, justice, and protection for those who cannot protect themselves. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Some elders worried that sending Kangthor into the galaxy would expose their hidden world to danger. Others argued that their isolation meant nothing if they allowed innocents to suffer when they had the power to help. Finally, it was Kangthor himself who convinced them with a proposal that honored both dragon, wisdom, and human determination. Give me 1 year, he requested. Let me gather proof that the Kethmari experiments continue. If I can show that innocent beings still suffer in their laboratories, then perhaps we can find a way to stop them without abandoning our principles of peace. Elder Minai spoke. For many, when she said, and if you find this proof, what then? You are just one person against an entire alien empire. Kangthor smiled, and his eyes reflected the inner fire he had learned from dragons. Then I will do what dragons have always done. I will protect the innocent and stand against injustice no matter the cost. The vote was close, but compassion won over fear. The elders agreed to let Kangthor leave Taysan for 1 year. Master Dongzu would prepare a small spacecraft with the most advanced dragon technology. Scholar Minai would provide him with false identity documents and credits to survive in galactic society. Most importantly, Elder Hieran would give him something no other being in the galaxy possessed, a communication device that could call for dragon help across any distance. If Kangthor found himself in mortal danger, or discovered something that threatened galactic peace, the dragons would answer his call. On the day of departure, the entire dragon community gathered in the crystal caverns to see him off. Youngho, who was now a proud adult dragon, gave Kangthor a pendant made of Thyssen crystal that would always remind him of home. Come back to us, brother, Youngho said, using the dragon word for family member. The mountains will not be the same without your laughter. Kangthor hugged his dragon family goodbye and walked into the small ship they had prepared for him. The craft was beautiful, with crystalline walls and systems that responded to thought as much as touch. It could travel faster than most military vessels, and its sensors could detect life from incredible distances. As the ship rose through the Crystal caves toward the surface. Kangthor looked back at the only home he remembered. The dragons who had saved him stood watching with glowing eyes full of love and worry. He promised himself he would return to them with honor. But first he had work to do in the cold galaxy above. The Kethmari thought their crimes were hidden and their failures forgotten. They had no idea that their greatest experiment had survived and grown strong. They did not know that justice was coming for them in the form of a human raised by dragons. The ship broke through Tayson's atmosphere and entered the star-filled void. Kangthor set course for the nearest inhabited system, where he could begin his investigation. His enhanced senses were already detecting radio signals from dozens of worlds. Somewhere in that chatter would be clues about continuing Kethmari experiments. He had 1 year to gather evidence. 1 year to build a case that would convince his dragon family to act. 1 year to save lives that were being destroyed in alien laboratories, just as his had almost been destroyed. The boy who had been abandoned. To die was now a man with the wisdom of dragons and the determination of humanity. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you gave someone the power to fight back and the moral foundation to use that power wisely. Kangthor activated the ship's advanced sensors and began scanning for his first target. The hunt for justice had begun. Kangthor arrived at Haven Station 6 days after leaving Tayson. The massive trading post floated in space between 3 star systems where merchants and smugglers met to do business. It was the perfect place to gather information without asking too many questions. Using the false identity Scholar Minai had created, he registered as a freelance investigator named Hanzol. His job would be finding missing persons and tracking down criminals for anyone willing to pay. It was work that would let him search for Kethmari activity without raising suspicion. The first clues came within a week. A Talaxian merchant named Vexpro approached him about finding his missing daughter. She had been traveling on a passenger ship that disappeared near the Kethmari border 3 months ago. The authorities say it was pirates, Vexpro explained with tears in his large eyes. But no wreckage was found. No ransom demands were made. My little Zara just vanished along with 200 other passengers. Kangthor accepted the case and began investigating. His enhanced abilities let him access computer networks that should have been secure. His dragon training taught him to be patient and thorough. What he found made his blood run cold. The passenger ship had been captured intact by Kethmari vessels. The passengers were listed in secret files as biological specimens and taken to research facilities throughout their empire. Zara and dozens of other young beings were still alive in alien laboratories. But this was just one ship. As Kangthor dug deeper, he found evidence of a massive operation. The Kethmari had been kidnapping beings from hundreds of worlds for over 30 years. They had built 17 hidden research stations where they conducted experiments that made what they did to him seem gentle. The worst discovery came when he hacked into their central database. The Kethmari were trying to create an army of modified soldiers using techniques they had learned from studying him. They called it Project Genesis and planned to use these super soldiers to conquer entire star systems. Kangthor realized he could not handle this alone. The scope of the crimes was too large and the victims numbered in the thousands. He needed help, but he also needed proof that would convince others to act. His first major success came on the mining world of Kepler 7. Intelligence reports suggested a Kethmari research facility was hidden beneath the main mining complex. Kangthor spent weeks studying the location before making his move. The facility was exactly where his sources said it would be. 3 levels underground behind security barriers that would stop most infiltrators. But Kangthor was not most infiltrators. His enhanced nervous system let him interface directly with their computer networks. Their own security systems opened doors for him like he belonged there. What he found in the hidden laboratories broke his heart. Over 300 beings from dozens of species were trapped in containment cells. Many were children no older than he had been when the Kethmari first took him. All showed signs of genetic modification and psychological trauma. But Kangthor had learned patience from the dragons. Instead of rushing to free the prisoners immediately, he spent hours documenting everything. His modified memory recorded every face, every experiment log, every piece of evidence. He copied terabytes of research data that proved the extent of Kethmari crimes. Only then did he begin the liberation. His enhanced abilities made it almost easy. Security systems failed as he overwhelmed their programming with his neural interface. Containment fields flickered and died when he touched their control panels. Within 2 hours, every prisoner was free, and the facility's research data was being transmitted to news networks across the galaxy. The Kethmari response was swift and brutal. Admiral Rathkul, who now commanded their entire research division, issued a galaxy-wide bounty for Kangthor's capture. 1 billion credits for the human who should not exist, dead or alive. But the liberation of Kepler-7 had already achieved something more important than Kangthor's personal safety. For the first time in decades, beings across the galaxy were learning the truth about Kethmari experiments. News reports showed the rescued prisoners telling their stories. Scientists analyzed the stolen research data and confirmed its authenticity. Most importantly, the other victims began to speak. Beings who had escaped previous experiments came forward with their own evidence. Families of missing persons provided information about suspicious disappearances. A network of survivors and allies began to form. From his hidden base aboard the Dragon ship, Kangthor began broadcasting a message that would change everything. Using communication networks throughout the galaxy, he spoke directly to anyone willing to listen. I am Kangthor, son of dragons, and survivor of Kethmari experimentation. I speak for every innocent being who has suffered in their laboratories. For every child taken from their family. For every person treated as nothing more than genetic material to be studied and discarded. His voice carried the calm authority he had learned from Elder Hyaron and the fierce determination of his human heritage. The time of hiding is over. The time of silence is ended. The Kethmari believe their crimes can remain secret forever. They believe their victims are too weak or too few to challenge them. They are wrong. The broadcast reached billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Others were afraid to believe that justice might finally be possible. But many recognized the truth in his words and began to act. Protest demonstrations erupted on dozens of worlds. Politicians who had ignored Kethmari crimes for years found themselves facing angry voters demanding action. Military commanders who had secret agreements with the alien empire discovered that their own soldiers were questioning those relationships. But Kangthor knew that words alone would not be enough. The Kethmari had too much power and too many allies among corrupt officials. Real change would require more than protest and political pressure. It would require a demonstration of power that the galaxy could not ignore. Something that would prove the victims were no longer helpless. Something that would show the Kethmari that their crimes had consequences. Kangthor activated the communication device Elder Hyaron had given him and sent a simple message back to Tayson. 3 words that would end 20 years of dragon isolation. We need you. The final battle began exactly where Kangthor's nightmare had started 30 years ago. Nexus 7 had been rebuilt into the largest Kethmari research facility in the galaxy. Its laboratories now held over 2,000 prisoners from hundreds of worlds. Admiral Rathkul had chosen to make his final stand there. But the human who returned to that cursed moon was no longer the frightened child who had been abandoned to die. Kangthor commanded a liberation fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dragon warships emerged from hyperspace, like falling stars, their crystal hulls shining with inner fire. The Draktharian had voted to end their isolation not for conquest or politics, but to protect innocent lives. Elder Hyaron herself commanded the lead ship, her ancient wisdom guiding weapons that had slept for 1,000 years. Behind her flew 50 dragon vessels crewed by warriors who had trained in secret, while the galaxy forgot they existed. Alongside the dragons came ships from every corner of civilized space. The rescued prisoners from Kepler-7 had spread word of Kangthor's mission to their home worlds. Governments that had ignored Kethmari crimes for decades sent their fleets to join the liberation. Even former enemies put aside their differences to stand against the slave-taking empire. The battle for Nexus 7 lasted only 6 hours. Dragon technology, enhanced by centuries of peaceful development, overwhelmed Kethmari defenses like sunlight melting ice. Their energy shields collapsed under crystal-focused beam weapons. Their missile systems failed when Dragon electronic warfare turned their own computers against them. But Admiral Rathkul refused to surrender. He sealed himself in the facility's deepest laboratory with his most valuable research data and a dozen elite guards. His plan was to destroy everything before the liberators could reach him, including all the prisoners in the lower levels. This was exactly what Kangthor had expected. While the Dragon fleet secured the orbital stations, He led a small team directly into the facility. His enhanced senses guided them through passages he remembered from childhood, while his neural interface disabled security systems. The confrontation with Admiral Rathkul came in the same laboratory where Dr. Vextan had once studied a human child 30 years ago. The alien commander stood surrounded by his guards and the machinery of torture that had defined his career. "You should be dead," Rathkul chittered through his translator. The termination protocols were followed exactly. The records confirm complete disposal. "The records lied," Kangthor replied with the calm voice Hieron had taught him, "just as you have lied to your people, to the galaxy, and to yourself. You created me to be your perfect weapon, but you never understood what you were truly making." The Admiral's compound eyes reflected fear and confusion. The human standing before him radiated power that his sensors could not measure. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. "You made me stronger, faster, and more intelligent than any human should be," Kangthor continued, stepping closer. "But you could not modify my conscience. You could not change my capacity for compassion. Those traits that you saw as weaknesses are what make humanity truly dangerous to beings like you." Rathkul raised his weapon, but Kangthor moved faster than the alien eye could follow. His dragon training and enhanced reflexes let him disarm all 12 guards in seconds. None of them were seriously hurt because despite everything they had done, he would not become a killer like them. The liberation of Nexus 7 revealed horrors that shocked even hardened military commanders. Thousands of test subjects from hundreds of worlds filled the facility's laboratories. Research data spanning decades of illegal experimentation covered terabytes of storage. Evidence of collaboration with corrupt officials throughout the galaxy painted a picture of systematic evil that reached into every corner of civilized space. But the most significant discovery waited in the facility's deepest vault: genetic samples from Kangthor's original family, preserved for over 30 years along with similar materials from thousands of other victims. Using dragon biotechnology and careful analysis, it became possible to identify the families of beings who had been stolen as children. The galaxy watched in amazement as the Liberation Fleet broadcast live coverage of the rescue operation. Dragon ships and human vessels worked together to evacuate the rescued prisoners. Medical teams from dozens of worlds provided care for beings who had suffered unimaginable trauma. Most importantly, families separated by decades of lies and cruelty began to find each other again. 3 months after the fall of Nexus 7, Kangthor stood before the Galactic Council in their great assembly hall. Representatives from every major civilization had gathered to hear his testimony about Kethmari crimes and the formation of what history would call the Liberation Alliance. "Honored representatives," he began using diplomatic language Scholar Minai had taught him. "We gather today not to celebrate victory but to prevent future tragedies. The Kethmari Empire has fallen, but the conditions that allowed their crimes must never be permitted again." His proposal was simple but revolutionary: a permanent alliance of species dedicated to protecting the innocent and preventing exploitation of the weak. Military forces that could respond quickly to reports of slavery or illegal experimentation. Most importantly, a commitment that no being would ever again suffer alone and forgotten in secret laboratories. The vote was unanimous. Even former Kethmari allies supported the Liberation Alliance once they learned the full scope of the Empire's crimes. Admiral Rathkul and his surviving commanders were sentenced to life imprisonment on a prison world where they would experience the isolation they had forced on so many others. But for Kangthor, the greatest victory was personal. Among the genetic samples found on Nexus 7 were materials from his original mother, Kim Sora. Dragon biotechnology made it possible to create a memorial that would honor her sacrifice and ensure she was never forgotten. Standing in the crystal gardens of Tayson, Kangthor placed his hand on the memorial stone and spoke to the mother he barely remembered. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "The beings who hurt us can never hurt anyone again. Your son survived and grew strong enough to protect others. You would be proud of the family that raised me and the justice we achieved together." Elder Hieron stood beside him, her ancient eyes reflecting both sadness and pride. "She would indeed be proud, my son. You have honored both your birth family and your chosen family." Around them, dragon and human children played together in the crystal caves. The isolation that had protected the dragons for millennia was over, but it had been replaced by something better. alliance with beings who shared their values of protection and justice. The galaxy had learned that family was not defined by species or genetics, but by love, loyalty, and the courage to stand together against injustice. The Kethmari had sought to create the perfect weapon, but instead they had created the perfect protector. Kongthor looked up at the stars visible through the crystal ceiling and smiled. Somewhere out there, other beings faced dangers and injustices, but they would not face them alone. The Liberation Alliance would stand ready to help, just as the dragons had once helped a frightened human child. The boy who had been experimented on and abandoned had become the guardian of galactic justice. His story would be told for generations as proof that no matter how dark the circumstances, hope could survive and grow into something beautiful and strong.